Hey, how's everyone doing today? It's Desi here. I was just gonna talk to y'all a little bit about um, the kingdom of heaven being inside us. We go through different emotional states throughout the day, throughout our lives, and these emotional states of being, um, all of them are already inside us. And sometimes we get stuck into states, which, if you're stuck in a state too long, it become a mood. And then if you're stuck in this state of like for longer, it could become even a personality trait, so to say. Um, we all go through different traumas in our life that cause us to be one way or another. But realize that every emotional state that's inside us is a key way to helping freeing us from ourselves as well. And we don't have to be stuck in these states. We could change these states of being just by changing the way that we look at things. And so it's going to kind of go over like some of the ways that I kind of do this, for myself, and that ways that you could do it, and just kind of have this little conversation about it all. Um, so, like I said, the kingdom of heaven is inside us, and a lot of people, like, they think that it's maybe some holy place that you go to, like when you die or whatever. But that's not necessarily the case. It's right here and right now, and we can experience it. And obviously, this experience, can be heaven or hell depending on, how we're looking at life. And so, really, all heaven is a certain vibration, a certain higher frequency of just, being at peace within yourself, with who you are, and finding that state of like joy and happiness throughout the day, and continuing to go back to it, and finding that. Um, and no one can like take that away from you or keep you from being in these states of being except yourself. It's easy to sometimes to like dread on things, and to feel down, and put yourself down, because we're all harder on ourselves than we are if someone else was like telling us something. So I would always say, like, try to be your own best friend, like when you're looking at things sometimes. And sometimes it might help take off some of that, um, I guess, judgment that you give towards yourself, because like I said, we are harder on ourselves than most people would be. So if you could kind of like take yourself out of like your own space, like sometimes when you're feeling bad, and almost look at it from outside of your body and be like, okay, like if this was me, or a friend, and I was trying to help them through this, like, what would I say, and then you can continue to say what you would say, but say it to yourself, you know and this is a really helpful tool that I've come to use, because you're not always maybe going to have the friend there to talk to you, but you could be your own best friend. And by doing this and developing this skill, you really are creating a way for you to just continually improve your life, because you're always going to be there for yourself, no matter what. You're going to be your number one fan or your number one enemy. So this is a great tool to try to use every now and again, when you're getting to these states of maybe beating yourself up. But also, like I said, none of these states um, are everlasting. That's why they say, there's always going to be a brighter day, and this too shall pass. So, like, good times, bad times, like, it's all going to go away. We're going to, pendulum's going to always swing one way or the other, but it's kind of how we perceive life and go with the flow of life. Like, if you're having a great time, enjoy that great time, but know that it's going to pass. You can't always live in that fantastic state, because we live in the real world, and it is going to swing to the other side in the same way when it's there. Like, it's not always going to be bad either. So don't dwell in that state either, and just learn to kind of go with the flow of life, like a tree does, like in a storm, or you just kind of flowing with the wind. And it really does help. And just by changing our perceptive of like the way that life moves, you start to become a lot softer on yourself, and like these hard times aren't as bad because it's like you've been through the storm, or you're that rough rock that maybe fell into the river, and through time, like all these rough edges get smoothed out, and it just flows, and you like realize like, okay, this is an experience. Like, what am I supposed to learn from this? And if you go through life as like a learning process, because that's all it is. We're all here as spiritual, warriors, going through this learning process to help, expand consciousness, to help expand ourselves, growing ourselves. And, it could be beautiful, if you just perceive it in a good way. I mean, obviously, there's going to be times, that are going to be rougher than others, but learning to use emotions almost as like a keyhole into like your past traumas is like a good way to do some meditations as well. It's one of the things that I tried doing through some of my studies is like you'll go into like a meditation and you'll maybe sit with the emotion of like suffering or regret or like mistakes or just try to find like different things that might bug you, that might bubble up different thoughts or emotions within yourself, and then you could kind of sit with them, and as they come up you try to find ways to release all that so that it's making it softer inside yourself. So then these things that are in your body, because the body is it holds a lot of this stuff, a lot of this trauma and stuff as you grow. And so it's like learning to find out like where these maybe traumas exist within your body. You can release this stuff, and as you're releasing it, it just helps you to live lighter, and fuller. And then eventually, you're not gonna have all this stuff that bubble up that you say you might get triggered, throughout the week, and you notice this is happening, and you're like, well, what is this that I'm like upset about? Is this like coming from this? Or if it's always the same thing, you could kind of like maybe look into it and see if this is something that happened back in your childhood or past or something, and maybe you felt like no one recognized you then or something. You could feel like into the emotion of that, and like not being accepted or whatever, and then you can accept yourself in a way, and you can move past what this emotion is. And as we continue to do that, and really I think that's what meditation is. A lot of people think that they can't do it or whatever, they're like, my mind's just racing. It's not necessarily controlling your mind when you go into meditation. It's just being aware of what's going through it. You're never going to stop the thoughts, but you can be aware of like what's actually flowing through there. And and I think that's the main goal, is to stay focused. It's like if you're driving a car and you're going home the same route, like every day. Sometimes you'll be driving and then like you end up at home and you're like, oh shit, like I hope I drove good like that last like 5 or 10 minutes or whatever, and you're like, well, I'm home. But and so I think that's like like in meditation, like the mind is going to drag you off into the bushes sometimes, and the main thing is like focusing maybe back on the road and realizing what's like going through there. And that's really all meditation is you're just seeing like what's passing through your mind, and then you can change those, revise those thoughts, revise the things that are going through there, so you're creating a better inner world for yourself. And if you continually do this, it's going to change your outer world, because you're not living in these older states of maybe hurt and regret or suffering or all these different like things that we feel or have felt. Because when you start to live in these states over a long period of time, you become, a Debbie Downer or something. You just don't want to get stuck um, living the same emotions over and over again every day. And so, it's all about um, just getting a new perspective on life and finding ways to improve your thinking, your quality of life. And so, like I said, I think the best way to do that is to continually explore your inner world, set time throughout the day for a little meditation. Um, I know some people will be like, well, it's so boring. It's like, well, is it boredom or is it peace that you're feeling right now at this time? Like, you don't have to necessarily just run away from this. And it's easy to get up and just go do something and try to be active and continually have outer stimulation, I guess. But if you can like train yourself to sit down and take the time out throughout the day to, just 30 minutes throughout the day to sit and maybe watch what's going through, feel what's going through, you really are going to continue to make leaps and bounds compared to someone that's always searching for outer stimulation, scrolling through an app, doing whatever. And meditation doesn't necessarily have to be always sitting in place. I do a lot of walking meditations out in nature, to where you're just focusing on, like I said, what's going through your mind. And when you have this stuff going through, sometimes you could dive deep into it and be like, okay, well, where's this coming from? And try to find out if there's like a root cause, or if it's just some outer stimulation that might be there. You could just let it float on by and just watch how thoughts come in and go like clouds. And sometimes you don't need to even touch anything, and they just leave by themselves. So it's just a matter of learning, I guess, your own inner world. And as you do that, you see what comes and goes most often through yourself, and you can kind of get like a flavor of the coloring of your life. It's like, what limiting beliefs do I have that's holding me back from being the best version of myself? And as you start to explore this, it really does brighten your day and hopefully brighten the lives of others. And it's we're all going to have ups and downs, and some days are going to be worse than others, and it's easy to get drug into the mud and stuff every now and again. But I think the more that you do this, the faster you can get out of these lower states of being, because you already have done so much groundwork that it's easy to where you could just like, okay, no, I'm not gonna believe that. I want to revise it. I know that I'm doing the best I can. I'm always, trying to uplift others, uplift myself, trying to do this. So like you have that backbone of like these small little steps or bricks that you've already put into place to know that, I got this. This is a foundation here. So I just say, let's just all keep going and don't give up. And these states of being, when you get in them, they can be changed, because happiness lives within us. And so it's never outside of us. So it's just learning how to manufacture all these different states of being, so that when we are feeling one way or another, we can manufacture another way. The body's the biggest chemical plant in the world, and all these chemicals that people get dropped in here from like different drugs or whatever, they already exist within the body. So the body already knows how to create these things. So it's learning how to create the DMT or dopamine or whatever within ourselves, to basically make us feel better and to create a better world within ourselves. And through the practice or practices, I don't think that there's going to be one like kill all practice. I think it's basically just I do a lot of different things, but It's just learning to figure out what works for you. What works for you, it might not work for anyone else. Every path is going to be different up the mountainside, but they all get to the same place. So just don't give up on yourself. Keep trying, and realize that heaven is a state of being within ourselves. It's not something with outside of ourselves. So if we just keep learning and keep trying to progress forward, and use our imagination in a beautiful way to where we could start feeling ourselves as our higher selves, and just start believing in that we can achieve anything, that there isn't no limits for any of us. I think we'll all start to live a better life, or I know we will. So anyways, keep going. I'm always impressed with people and the ways to overcome these different hurts and emotions that flow through us. And so just keep staying amazing, and we'll make this world a better place together. All right, thanks.